Um, I think everybody here has been here before. Yep, I think so. So I don't think we need to go over some of the regular announcements. So I'll just introduce our topic then. So tonight, Ern is going to be talking about lovifying our lives and the medical consequences of toxic relationships. I'm really interested to learn about that. So without any further ado, I'll invite Ern to come up.
Well, how's everybody tonight? Keeping well? Um, Here's what we're doing. It's called Lovify Your Life, and I'll talk about what that means in a moment. But when we actually do this sort of thing, what we're trying to understand is body-mind vitality. So not just the mind and not just the body, but body and mind together. And what are all the principles, the most powerful principles, that go together to make you not only survive but thrive. And of course, food and nutrition is one of those. But there is more, and we find out more and more. It's just so wonderful what we're finding out. It actually gives us more, tools in our hands that we can use to make our lives better in so many ways, physiologically as well as mentally, etc. And so if you take a look here, Tuesday and Wednesday, you see the blue Tuesday and Wednesday. We're right now at the Lovify Your Life, but tomorrow night, it's the 4 pillars of fitness. And so I might ask some of you to even demonstrate kind of fitness stuff. I don't know. So bring loose clothing and all that. Sometimes, if it was in the summertime, I'd say bring your runners, bring your track suit, and we're going to do some moves for tomorrow night. That's Wednesday night. So we used to call this homework, but now we're going to call it the full power action step. How's that sound? And the homework, or the full power action step, which came from the workbook, from page 23 and 25, are the habit trackers. In the textbook, or in the main book, we just simply call them a checklist. Here's the checklist for the top 10 habits for this principle. And there's 9 principles. So that means there's 90 habits you can choose from, which is kind of good. You're not trying for perfection. You just do what the next one is, and you can read what they are. So I'm kind of curious, and I'm almost kind of afraid to ask how many have actually done this. Raise your hands. Okay, well, some. I'm glad for some. Yes, it's in the workbook. It's also in the main book, and eventually it'll be on the website as well, fullpower1.com. So you can just do that. And so in the workbook, I'm going to now give you a little bit more of, not related to the topic tonight, but just to say what's in the workbook itself at the end, like the appendices. And you notice here on page 32 of the workbook, people keep on saying, give me a menu to follow. Give me some recipes. Give me a recipe book. And so I was talking to my wife about this, who has actually written 2 recipe books in her lifetime. And one of them went into the 4th printing a few years back. And so she says, you know what? Based upon the principles that we have here, why not just give a menu for life and give principles rather than specifics? So that's what's in the back of the workbook, is the principles for a menu, which you can use forever. But we did give some samples in there, and so it just gives some principles there. The things we talked about mostly is on Saturday night when we talked about prioritize high-octane fuel. So that's in there. Menu guidelines, you see there, breakfast, second meal, and third meal, should you need it. Most of us may not really need 3 meals if we're sedentary type of people, but it's up to you. And then here it says, for optimal vitality, create your cuisine from the high-octane fuel below. And then it lists all kinds of fruits, all kinds of vegetables, whole grains, legumes, and nuts. So the idea is just pick something from those categories, from each category every day. And if you go to Michael Greger's app called Greger's Daily Dozen, he'll give more specifics on what to eat every day. Does anybody know that one? Michael Greger's Daily Dozen? It's a pretty good app. Just go to your app store on your phone and you'll see it there. And so there's some samples. I won't go through it all. There's a lot there. And then I broke down and actually did give some menu examples. So day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5. Day 1 for breakfast, and day 1 for your second meal, and third meal is an option. So I won't read through all that, but these are just really, really broad examples of what you could do if you just want to get something going, if you want to go along there. And this page here is page 36. It's basically resources. I use a lot of these resources in the book and in what I talk about. And this page alone, I can't blow it up. This page alone is probably worth $100. Actually, no, $10,000. Because it has the websites, which are the top websites to go to for lifestyle medicine and evidence-based nutrition and exercise and vitality, etc. So that page alone is worth the price of admission right there. How much did you pay, by the way, to get in here? Yeah, it's in the workbook. Yeah. So it's all. Doesn't matter if you don't want to buy the workbook, just ask me and I'll send it to you. I'm not a good businessman, but I care for the message itself. And then I actually did consult with a few people on what kind of cookbooks would actually work. Now, people have said you need to have a full power cookbook. And I know there must be 1 million cookbooks out there. And there's got to be at least 100,000 vegan and vegetarian and all that kind of, there's a lot of cookbooks out there. But I was looking particularly for cookbooks which have no salt, no sugar, and no oil. Now you narrow it down from 1 million down to about maybe 100 or so. Because you're going to have oil, I'm guessing. But if you can go without oil or sugar or salt, you'll be better off. We always need a little bit of salt, of course, but you'll be better off if you don't extract that from natural foods and just eat the natural foods. So there's a lot of cookbooks out there that have low oil or low fat or low sugar. But Full Power says no sugar, except what's in the banana and the apple and stuff like that. And so no oil. So how many cookbooks have that? Not very many. So this is the closest that I could come right here with the cookbooks that come close to that. That comes close to that. And so that's on, I forget what page it is, page 37 there. And you'll notice that Erica Nedley from, I believe that's Neil Nedley's wife or daughter, I forget which. And then George Guthrie, he's an Adventist doctor over in Orlando, has a book. And then Forks Over Knives, the cookbook. They have a documentary as well. And then T. Colin Campbell, I believe it's his daughter, Leanne Campbell. I'm not sure if his daughter or his wife. And then another one by her. And then Rip Esselstyn, that's the son of Caldwell Esselstyn. They have a book. And another one by Neil Bernard. He's the head of the institution, what's it called? Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. And on you go. And so these are some potential cookbooks if you're looking for something. They're not perfect. I don't know what is perfect, but hey, it'll give you the best shot, I think, as you want to go. Any thoughts on that? I bet you have other ones that you know because some of you are into this. Yes? No, I'm saying low salt. You know what? Even bananas have salt in them, naturally. So we always say, yeah, I got to get some salt. The most salt we would ever need would be no more than even a teaspoon a day. That's the most salt we'd ever really need. And I love salt. I'm actually come from a long line of saltaholics. Salt on donuts and everything else. No, I don't do that. I'm just kidding. I'm exaggerating. And so I actually have had a long battle with salt in my life. But the fact is, our bodies do not need to have 99.99% of our bodies don't need to have any more than a teaspoon of salt added to our food in a daytime. If they get more than that, then there's some harm being done to our bodies for most of us. For most of us. Question? Yeah, it would help a little bit. Yeah. So find out how, if you are, you go to the doctor, have them do a blood workup on you, and find out where your deficiencies are, and then go by that. We need salt. We need salt to live even. It's just that we don't need as much as we like sometimes. Yes. Yes. She's talking about putting a little bit of any particular kind of salt, like pink salt, Himalayan salt or something, in the bottom of a water bottle, and that would help. Yes, for not a lot of people, it does help. It does help. But again, what it's good to do is go to your doctor and let your doctor tell you how's your blood pressure doing, how the mineral level's doing in your body, how's that balancing out with the potassium in your body. And then he could tell you, oh, you've been doing that now for a year, you seem to be okay. Well, then you know you can continue doing that. Because truly, we can give general rules, but we are individuals. And some of us have different things happening in our bodies, but don't just assume that we're like everybody else. Check with your doctor, and then he'll give you he'll give what do you call that, a requisition to go to the lab and get your blood and all that kind of stuff, and then back it comes. So I do that about once every 6 months or so, and I say, oh, I see I'm low on vitamin B12, so I got to get that up, and that, going like that. So that's what I would say to that. So what did we learn from the last session? Today's Tuesday night. Last time we met was Sunday, 4:30 and at 6:30, so we had two things going on. So what happened in your brain on Sunday, if you were here, between 4:30 and 5:30? We talked about find your superpower to fulfill your purpose. That was kind of the idea. Any hands? What did you learn? What insights did you get? Not a single thing. Oh, man. Yes, go ahead. Uh-huh. Did you hear what she said? If you really tap into that je ne sais quoi, which means in French, I don't know what. No, which is really your sense of purpose, right? You just want to do this. And if you take a look in the workbook and in the book, you read that. What if you don't know what your purpose is or your superpower is? What if you don't know? And then it gives about like 20-some questions. And one of those questions is, what keeps you up late at night, and enjoying it, not watching TV or anything, but if you're in a conversation with somebody or doing some kind of hobby or something, what would keep you up, like, because you're so interested in it? And a famous psychologist called I forget his last name, it's a long name. He just died a few years ago. He wrote a book called Flow. And that book is all about when we're in the zone, we can go, and we have both alertness and peace at the same time. And time can go, 6 hours could go by, and it just feels like a minute because we're so into what we're doing. That is what all of us need. What is it for you? It's different for different people. Artists, and sports people, and academics, and all kinds of different things it could be. It could be all kinds of different things. So yeah, that's good. Well, we did talk about purpose, and I put this up on the board also on Sunday. If you can fill this sentence, I blank so people can blank. And that's in the workbook as well and gives there's some examples there. The first example was, I, fix bicycles so people can ride safely. That's the purpose. That's the purpose of a bicycle mechanic. Or I cook healthy meals so people can feel better. I do this action thing to be a blessing to people so they can be or do this other thing. So if you can fill that sentence for you, then you've got yourself what Sandra was talking about, that thing that just makes you go. And it's really cool. It's a cool feeling. So I'm not going to ask you how many of you have that, because if you don't, I feel bad for you, but there's good news. Your life can get better just by finding out what that is. All right? So this is what we're talking about, generally speaking. We're transforming our body-mind by embracing root cause solutions. And those root cause solutions are typified and represented by the letters in full power. Okay, so that's where we're at right now, and there we are. So tonight, we're opening up the book and table of contents. What's circled in red, we've already done. Not in detail. The book has much more detail, especially the omit what is harmful part, which we talked about later, second session. I'll allude to that a little bit later on tonight. But now watch the screen right there. That's what we're going to be talking about tonight. So it's called Lovify Your Life. And in this book, the subtitle is Why Love Matters to Your Success. Tonight here, we've said the medical consequences of isolation. It's kind of the two sides of the same coin. Why we need to have love or social connections. Not just because it feels good, but there's so many other physiological benefits to go with that. So it's not just about food and exercise. There's something else that factors into our success in life and our health in life as well. Does that make sense? If it doesn't, I'll try and make it make sense as we go along. Now here's a calendar. We're on February 24 right now. The black boxes are when we don't meet. And then I'm suggesting, if you wish, on March 1, we're going to have our last meeting on March 1 in the evening. And that, since it's the first day of the month and also the first day of the week, it's just a perfect day to say, you know what? That's the day I'm going to launch my plan. I've been learning a few things. I've been reminded of what I already know and should have been doing anyway. And so it may be that if you prepare yourself, and right now it's the 24th, so 25, 26, 27, 28, 4 days, 5 days. So today is like launch minus 5. And tomorrow is launch minus 4. And then it's launch day. And then at Cape Canaveral, they launch the rocket up in outer space. That's launch day. And they're always counting down. So you could be counting down to say, you know what? There's some principles, I don't know if I can do them. But there's another principle that he mentioned, I'm going to do that one. So you just take it on. And you commit yourself to it. And you're going to launch. And you're going to do it. And so the reason why launch your plan is a chapter in the book is because this is more than just information. It's also motivation for transformation. So I'm glad that you want to get information. But you know what? You want to know, okay, what am I really going to do? That's going to take so many minutes of the day, at a certain time of the day. Routines in the morning, routines at night, and what am I going to not do so I can replace the thing that I want to do? Those are the things that I'm asking you to do for at least one new habit starting March 1, if you wish. I'm not going to force you, but I sure like to encourage you, okay? So tonight, well, Lovify Your Life. And so in the workbook, we're looking at page 18 and 19. Page 18 is a blank page mostly with this on the top. I'll read it. The most significant component to human thriving is the experience of positive social connection. Learning how to give and receive love has astounding effects on physical health, on happiness, longevity. Page 18, it's for you to write your notes on, page 18. And then on page 19, I'm not going to show it there, but on page 19 is the habit tracker. That's where you ask yourself those 10 questions. And you rate yourself and you give yourself a score out of 10. And when you give yourself a score out of 10, you add that number to the other scores out of 10 for the other habit trackers. 9 principles, 9 sets of habit trackers. Total of 90 points except for one thing. Launch your plan is worth 20. Now that equals 100. And now you can get a score out of 100. And then when you do that, you know if you're bronze, silver, or gold, or not got a medal yet. And there's at the very back page, I think it's page 36 or something, it shows that dashboard. And we'll get into that a little bit tomorrow on the dashboard. But if you have any questions, let me know. So thoughts, comments so far? Are you with me? Okay. So this picture here kind of partially depicts what we'll be talking about. Here's a group of people. They look like they really get along pretty good. They love each other. When we talk about love, it's not just romantic love. It's also brotherly love and familial love and like buddy camaraderie kind of love and family love. And so that's generally what I'm talking about when I talk about love. But look, it actually helps our hearts to pump blood more efficiently and our cardiovascular system. It actually strengthens our immune system. It actually helps with brain functioning. And some have associated this with intelligence, but maybe it might have more to do with memory or alertness. And other studies have shown that simply having love in our lives, strong social relationships, actually makes us physiologically stronger. And so there's so many cool things that we can say about this. So we're going to get into it a little bit and be looking out for at least one or two things that you may want to address in your own life if you want to say, yeah, I think I want to do that. So just be on the lookout for that in the next half hour or so. So I was in the drugstore. I wasn't buying drugs. And I saw this on the magazine rack, McLean's magazine. I said, oh, look at that. I'm going to be talking about that. I'm going to take a picture of this. So here's what it says. Join the compassion revolution. Or we're all doomed. I thought, wow, what a thing to say on the front cover of a magazine. Then it says, there's an urgent call for more compassion as a last gasp remedy for systems on the brink. Politics, healthcare, the planet itself. But do we even have it in us? And of course, we do have it in us. But it's a challenge. And the challenge in the article in the magazine tells us compassion, love for one another, is something that this world needs more of and that we need more of for more than one reason. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Now, does anybody remember when we talked on Sunday night, what is the root cause of addiction? And we're focusing on food addiction, but the mechanism, the underlying mechanism is very similar. Alcohol, cigarettes, drugs, even behaviors, like gambling and stuff. Same mechanism, the reward centers of the brain. So, do you remember what we said about that? Social what? Abandonment. Is that what you're going to say? Something close? Dopamine. Yes, you said dopamine there. Yeah, excellent. The dearth of dopamine receptors caused by social abandonment. Did you say something along those lines? Yeah, so as I was trying to figure that out, and remember I put a picture of a little boy kind of cowering, and then I put 10 things, and we call them ACEs. ACEs. ACE. Adverse childhood experiences. And then we said that the more ACEs you have or had, the more likely you will be sick and have diseases and addictions when you are an adult. And that is just, when that was first discovered about 20 years ago, it was really unbelievable. It was actually mind-boggling to think that childhood experiences actually have an effect on how many diseases you get, 25 years later. It's just quite amazing. And so as I was looking at those 10, I thought, what could we say about them all in one word? In one word. And I think, Lucas, you came pretty close there, but I'm going to use the word disconnection. Because when we are abused, obviously there's a disconnection. When we are neglected, that's a disconnection. When we feel isolated, well, that's disconnection. So I thought disconnection would be a very good word. And by the way, here's that image that I put up there. Physical abuse, physical neglect, household member who has suffered from mental health issues, sexual abuse, loss of parent due to death, divorce, or abandonment, emotional abuse, emotional neglect, so it could be either way, household member addicted to illegal drugs or alcohol, household member who was incarcerated and then witnessing domestic violence against the mother. So since this was done about 20 years ago, there actually have been a few more added on, but this seems to be the foundation of the understanding of ACEs. And this factors into trauma-informed counseling today, which I think we need more of. And so we think about that. And so that word disconnection seems to be, if I could use that word to encapsulate all those terrible things that could happen to us as a child, if that is what's causing, and it does, the brain to develop when we're younger with less dopamine receptors, and therefore that feels like life dissatisfaction to us. But it's fewer dopamine receptors. There's more to it. I'm oversimplifying, but I hope you get the idea. Well, then if that's disconnection, what's the answer? Well, you guys are smart. Connection. You would think connection would be the answer, right? If disconnection is the root cause of food addiction and other addictions, what's the solution? And yeah, the solution is connection. And hence we have the chapter in the book, Lovify Your Life. So it's more than just, it's a nice thing to do. No, it's a therapeutic thing to do. We all need to be healed. I mean, we just live in a world of pain and suffering, and all of us, none of us here are perfect, I don't think. And so we all have something. We all got something, whatever it may be, whatever issues it is. And so it's not a matter of I'm better than you or you're better than me. It's a matter of how are you in what you're doing versus how am I in what I'm doing. We're all smart in something. We're all dumb in something else. And so anyway, we're all equal. But the idea is that we all need to be connected. So doing some more research on this, trying to put all this together. From the National Academy of Sciences, here's one. I'm going to read 3 statements. Here's one. Social isolation has been associated with about 50% increased risk of developing dementia. Wow, really? Now, it doesn't mean that if you're isolated, you will get dementia. It doesn't mean that. It means there's an association and an increased risk of. If you actually do get dementia, there's other factors that come into that. But social isolation is a pretty big factor. And then loneliness among heart failure patients has been associated with a nearly 400% increase risk of death, whereas poor social relationships have been associated with a 29% increased risk of incident coronary heart disease and a 32% increased risk of stroke. So we do see then that our sense of connection, our sense of belonging with other people, the positive relationships that we could have, it really does make a difference. It makes a big difference physiologically. Quite amazing. So, in short, and this is again from the National Academy of Science, social connectivity is vital to human health. Therefore, that's why I had to put it into the book. Lovify Your Life. We just call it Lovify Your Life, and I'll explain that more. But it had to go into the book. If you're going to write a book on Full of Power and optimize body, mind, vitality, you've got to put this in. And it's not in everything that you see out there. But science just is too strong for us not to include this in a program for health. It's just so needed. So now it's time to define Lovify. Because as I mentioned before, it's a word that I made up to try to encapsulate what all this is about connection and all that. So I'm going to put on one side of the screen, Lovify is the capacity to love others. So what is your capacity to love other people? It's the opposite of not just hatred, but it's the opposite of apathy. It's also the opposite of fear. And so to have that capacity to love others is actually something that we can learn and grow with. But it's needed to have these benefits we've been talking about. Now, it also includes, though, the ability to attract and receive love from others. So it's not just a one-way thing. So when we talk about Lovify, it goes both ways. So we all need love. And we all need to give love. It goes both ways. And together, that's lovifying your life. So does it make sense? So if I could simplify it even further, the capacity to love others is being loving, and the capacity to receive loving from others is being lovable. So being loving and being lovable has scientific repercussions, medical consequences on our bodies, on our longevity, etc. What do you think? Does that make sense? So knowing this, I'm guessing that, okay, I think I want to be motivated to be loving. And I want to make sure that I am lovable as well. So that kind of leads to that step. We do want to talk about that. So I will talk about that, but starting off with the story of these two dogs. They don't look like they love each other, those dogs, really. But let me just tell you the story about one dog, first dog. And I'm going to ask you after I finish the two stories, what made the difference? That's the question for you as I'm telling you the story. What made the difference? So here's the first dog. Okay, just checking. That's not a dog. So I'm going to ask you this question. Have you ever been in the woods and you saw a bear? Raise your hands. You've seen a bear. Wow, like almost everybody. Now, have you ever been in the woods and you saw a mother bear with cubs? Raise your hands. Woo, okay. Now, is there a difference between the bear and the mother bear? Okay, I am told that if you not come up to a bear, but you see a bear, and if he sees you, he'll run away. Like he doesn't want to mess with you. But if it's a mother bear, that mother bear, she ain't going anywhere, and as a matter of fact, you better watch out. I'm guessing you don't run, because you're not going to outrun the bear. But good news, if you're with somebody else, all you got to do is outrun the other person, and you're safe. You've lost your friend, but okay, Lovify, yeah, okay, thank you for that. So here's a mother bear. You don't mess with a mama bear. Well, I guess I really never had that experience, but I'm going to talk about dogs instead. So I get to Berman University, and a long time ago, and I'm staying in the dormitory, which is right there. And every night, sometimes be late at night, always dark, I would go for a run. And after all my work was done and everything else, and I'd start at the library, which was right about there, and I go down this road. I think it's called University Drive. And I go down the road, and it's a hill. It's like a kilometer to get to the bottom, and you kind of go up again and go up to a main road. And so I did that and turn around and come back. Well, the first time I did that, it took 21 minutes. I always time myself, 21 minutes to do that. And then I got it down to 19 minutes. I was feeling good. I was running, and then after about maybe a month of that, not every night, but a lot of nights, 17 minutes, and I was starting to brag to people how fast I was. Can you do that in 17 minutes? And all the way back and stuff. Well, when I couldn't beat 17 minutes. It was like that was my fastest. I couldn't beat 17 minutes at all. And so here's an actual picture of that road there going down. But the fact is, it was dark. So I try to make this picture look dark. And interestingly enough, as I was going down the road, this dog jumps out at me. Now, I understood, for those of you who know this college, that dog belonged to Dr. Bill Van Sheek, if anyone knows that name. And I don't know if that's true or not, but it was the ugliest dog I ever saw. It's slobber. He was a mangy mutt. And there are no street lights except for just two on the road, and so it was really dark. And so as I was jogging along like this, the dog jumps out and growls. It goes, "Arr!" Like his fur was up, its tail was up straight, and the dog meant business. And I figured it wasn't quite midnight yet, but I think he was thinking about me as a midnight snack. And so as soon as he jumped out, as soon as that happens, something happens in your body called fight or flight. It's the parasympathetic nervous system kicking in, the amygdala kicks in, senses danger, and it changes your body. It shuts down certain systems, it widens your eyes, your heart beats faster, sends blood to the muscles so you can fight or flight. And everything, adrenaline starts to flow. A lot of stuff happens at that very instant, that very second. So, do you think I fought or flight? I flighted. I flew. Luckily, I was going down the road, and as I ran as fast as I could, that dog was not letting up, and I heard his claws? Their claws? Nails, whatever. What? Nails on the pavement. And I heard him breathing. And I just knew that if I slowed down, he would take a chomp out of my foot or my leg or something. And so I was just running for my life. And I get down to the bottom of the hill, and then I had to go up to where the college is, and I knew it was 1 kilometer. So I now had to run uphill 1 kilometer with that mangy mutt following me. And so here is the hill. I make the turn and 1 kilometer up to the top there. And I don't know what I'm going to do. But the interesting thing is, in those times when you have that fight or flight and adrenaline is kicking in, I just soared up that hill. Oh, man, I was an athlete. And I just ran up that hill. I didn't even feel like I was going, I didn't feel that. I just felt so strong. And I went up that hill, and I got up to the library there, and I looked back, and I left that dog in the dust. And I looked at my watch, and guess how many minutes it took me to do that run? I beat my record by 2 minutes. I got it down to 15 minutes flat. I was so proud of myself. I told everybody how fast I could run. And sometimes I might have told them about the dog, but maybe not always. And so, so that lets you know that when you meet up with a dog and the dog is threatening, things happen physiologically. Emotion makes a difference on our physiology. That particular emotion was fear. But all of the emotions make a difference on our physiology. And now for the other story. This is me and my wife. What? You don't like the fence? No? All right, let's just say this is me and my wife, all right? So this is not me and my wife. But when I had that first dog experience, one of the places I ran by was the place of the woman I would soon marry. And I always make sure I could look her way to see if I can see her in the living room or something. But I never did. But I ended up marrying her, and now 2 or 3 years later, we're in Botwood, Newfoundland, 1985. And we go jogging every morning. And she's a principal of a small school. And so we're at like 5:30 in the morning. We're out on the road. And the sun is not even up yet, but the sun is coming up. And so I was taught that when I went walking with my woman, I'm supposed to walk on the outside, and my woman is on the inside. And why is that? I'm going to protect her, because if a car comes, I'm supposed to get run over to be a gentleman and not let my wife get run over. So when she comes to see me in the hospital, she'll love me even more, you see? So that's how that works. And so we're jogging along, and I'm on the outside where I should be, and it's dark, so it's not as light as this. And I think I have a drawing here. Well, I do have a drawing here. So here it is. You see, a dog is up there in the corner, and I'm the blue arrow, and my wife is the pink arrow. Man, oh man. No respect at all. No respect. Anyway, so my wife is faster than me, and so we're jogging along, and so I hear this dog. Now, it's a big dog. I didn't see the dog, I just heard it. Roar! Like, how do you make a really big dog sound? Roar! It was, but luckily, the dog was 3 yards over. So kind of like, yeah, you want to see a good close-up of him? Here he is. That dog was 10 feet long, and its teeth were like 6 inches long. All right? So there's a dog. Now, the houses are right there. The black boxes are houses. And the gray lines, those are white picket fences. And so we go along. Now watch what happens. I'm thinking the dog cannot jump the white picket fence. But the dog jumps the white picket fence, the first one, and there's 3 of them. And so now we're closer, and the dog is in the second yard, closer to us. And I realize that dog is not stopping. He is running for all it's worth, and he's barking. It's silent in Botwood. It's early in the morning, but that is the loudest sound and the only sound you hear. And so watch the green, the blue, and the pink arrow. Watch what happens now. See? When that dog got into the 3rd yard, the one closest to my wife, I automatically, without even thinking, said to myself, I need to take that dog down. That dog is going straight for my wife. He's going to jump that last fence, and he's going to tackle my wife, and I'm not going to let him. And I know there's going to be blood. His blood and my blood. I knew that. In an instant, I knew it. And so I immediately, as I'm jogging along, I go like this, and I go around here. So now my wife is over here, and I'm ready to take on the dog. And I did this instantly without thinking. It just had to be done. And so when I do that, when I make that maneuver, that gigantic German Shepherd, you could almost hear its paws screeching to a halt. Like that. He just making that part up. But he just slid, his paws slid about maybe 6 inches to 12 inches as he just stopped just on the other side of the fence. Now, I don't know, I could guess why he did that. They say, maybe you know better, dogs can sense fear. But I tell you, I had no fear. So maybe the dog could sense my courage or something like that. Because I was ready for pain. I was ready for that dog's teeth to bite into my hand, and I was ready to rip his mouth apart. I was thinking violent thoughts there. Now, interestingly enough, as soon as I did that, I didn't have to do any of that violence at all to save my wife. And so we just kept on going, and the dog just looked at us as we walked by. Now, here's my question to you. Why is it that the first dog I ran away from, and it was smaller, uglier, but smaller, and the second dog I was ready to take on. And that fight or flight syndrome, I was ready to do the fight. Same reaction in my body, the adrenaline, the eyes, the muscles, the blood, and certain systems shutting down, others kind of building up. And so I was ready to take that on. So could somebody please explain what made the difference? Yes, did you have your hand up? Huh. Mm-hmm. You are the best student. You hear what she said? She's the second dog, you had a loved one with you. And there's something to do with having a loved one nearby that doesn't happen when I was by myself with the first dog. That right there is a profound observation about what the presence of love does with a human being. Now, so I asked what made the difference. That is, that's the power of love. So that's what I want to kind of talk about tonight. Because, man, we all need that. We all need that. And more than just romantic love, I'm talking about love generally. So I had, in one case, like you're saying, love. In the first case, I had fear. Now, it's interesting. There's something in the Bible that talks about that. Some of you may know the Bible and know there's a psychological principle on that stuff. It's as love goes up, fear goes down. Let me see if I can illustrate. There's love, fear goes up, love goes down, fear goes up, and the opposite way. Where love is, or where fear is, love cannot be. And where love is, fear cannot be. Fear is the opposite of love. And so where fear is, anxiety is. Stress is. Stress brings out more cortisol in the body. Cortisol is the stress hormone. That in turn brings out more inflammation in the body. And the inflammation is the precursor to disease. So I'm oversimplifying, but I hope you get the idea. And so we don't want that. So we want to have the love go up so that the fear and everything with it goes down. And so love is really important. Love is really important. And so, so love is so important, it can create things that our body can do which our body couldn't do before. Now here's a girl. You can see what she wants to do. She wants to make that jump, that leap. Can she do it? Looks like she probably could, but it looks a little risky. But she's doing it. Now she's doing it because in the context of love, courage rules. She has support. She has people who are there for her. She has people who will catch her if she falls. And with all that support, it encourages her to go on. And so in the context of love, courage rules. And that's what happened to me when I was jogging with my wife and the dog came. Because I was in the presence of love. The characteristic of our relationship was love. And where there is love, and so you're willing to take on some things that you wouldn't otherwise have done when you would have ran away, like I did with the other dog. And so we need courage in life to take those risks. But with that courage, with love comes courage. And so not only that does love produce courage, motivation thrives. And when we're trying to talk about launching your plan, having love in your life, in other words, doing it with somebody else, it helps to motivate. Find a friend. Find a spouse. Find a buddy. Find whoever. And do it with them. You encourage each other on. Love releases chemicals in the brain that contribute to life vitality. It's so cool. To illustrate this, perhaps I can write it this way. Love switches on, the power switch, just switches it on. And I'm going to illustrate that by this building right here. Anyone recognize this building? You're wondering if it's the Parliament building in Victoria? It is, actually, but it doesn't look terribly inspiring. That's because when I got that picture, I put all the filters on it to make it look as ugly as possible. Why? Because I wanted to illustrate when you switch on the lights, watch what happens. There you go. Now it looks kind of pretty. And that's what Victoria looks like every single night. I used to live near Victoria, Brentwood Bay, where Butchart Gardens is. And I love to go downtown Victoria, see the lights and see everything else going on. And so, but the idea is that whenever people saw that building with the lights on, it's kind of like you're in Disneyland or something, it was kind of magic. It was a magical feeling. And so, but the difference between this and this is like someone turned on the lights. There's energy there. And that's what love does. It makes that, it's almost like magic. It just switches over. And so in the context of love, we also have the power to resist temptations as well. There's something physiological that causes us to think. Not just because I have a purpose, like I talked about on, I think it was Sunday, on Sunday, the first one on Sunday. Having a purpose helps us resist temptations. Now we're saying having love helps us resist temptations. And if you take a look at the purpose chapter and the love chapter, both of those are in the first section of the book called Full, F-U-L-L, the F part and the L part. The one thing that's left over is the U, unleash healthy spirituality. And then launch your plan. So you got F-U-L-L. This is what's needed so that we can have the success to not eat the junk food that we don't want to eat anyway, but we love it in the moment, and to be able to think long term and have that purpose, but also have the love. So that goes together. Does that make sense? Well, this gentleman, his name is Sean Aker. And he was a professor at Harvard University in Boston. And he got to be so successful as a professor, he quit and then he went on a tour teaching people about happiness. His class at Harvard on happiness had 1,600 students in it. One class, 1,600 students. And so he wondered, being a professor in psychology, what is it that causes Harvard students to thrive? And so he did a survey, did some studies and stuff like that. He also wrote these books, The Happiness Advantage, Big Potential. I read them both. And then he asked his students how were they doing in life and studies and in their work. And then he also got from the students various data points, like what was your SAT score, your college entrance exam score, what's your IQ, who are your parents, like how rich are you here because your parents were rich and they got you in. So he looked at all these elements of people going to Harvard, and his question was, what trait could we use to predict thriving at Harvard? So when you look at children, young people, you're looking at, see how they live, how they interact, and you're thinking, okay, will this young man be successful? And you're looking for some traits. Well, that's what he was doing as well. Will they be, how do we know who will be successful, and could we predict who would be successful and thrive? So that was his goal. So he said, using the most famously validated scale that measures how interconnected and socially supported an individual feels in their life, I found that social connection was, hands down, the greatest predictor of thriving, both personally and academically, at Harvard. As he wrote this in his book called the Happiness Book, he was about to give up because nothing predicted. I mean, how rich the student was, he thought, well, maybe that has something to come from a good family. They have lots of money, lots of resources. They can get you anything. But that really didn't predict success. And then their IQ, how intelligent they were. IQ of 140, wow, almost 160, a genius. And that didn't predict how much thriving they had. No. What predicted it was your social connections. Did you feel like you belonged to a group? Did you feel socially connected? That was the only predictor of thriving at Harvard. And so he wrote a book on that, and he expands that out to like the world. How do you feel? How connected do you feel? That's kind of like the question here. So social connection was the greatest predictor of thriving. So that's the question, how connected do you feel? Lots of organizations produce community. They produce connection. Churches produce that. Clubs, Lions Club, Rotary Club, schools, office place. And, there's lots of places where if you come and you feel like you belong, that actually helps you to live longer and feel healthier. So maybe the Beatles had it right after all. Anyone know that song? Yeah? All you need is love, right? Those of you who are old enough to remember that. Well, having a life partner, interestingly, according to the National Geographic, the Blue Zones, can add up to 3 years of life expectancy. Just having a life partner. Don't feel bad if you're single, by the way. You can still have a friend, so don't worry about it. Harvard study of adult development. This is yet another study. And in this study, it actually started in 1939, something. It's the longest study, like we think, in the world, longevity study, on, what do they call it? Adult development. So here, this study, which started back in 1939, and by the way, what they did, I'll just read it when it comes. The attributes researchers scrutinized was to determine the top predictor of health and happiness and longevity. So they all went together. They looked at how famous someone was. In 1939 at Harvard, guess who was a student at Harvard? John F. Kennedy was in this study. As a young man, who would have known that he would have been the president some years later? But they looked at how much fortune they had, social class, cholesterol levels, IQ levels, personality, introverted or extroverted and all these other things. Their genetics, they look at all that stuff. And again, they couldn't find an association between any of those with health and happiness and longevity. So after reviewing tens of thousands of pages of data, they found that none of these things predicted health, happiness, or longevity. The top predictor of health, happiness, and longevity was close relationships. The people who were the most satisfied in their relationships at age 50 were the healthiest at age 80. And remember, this is a longevity study. They're still doing it now in 2026. And it started in 1939. They went after, here's what they did. They took the students, I think they're the second or third year students at Harvard, and asked them all these questions about things. And then they compared them to some boys who were like downtown Boston, who were like the poorer boys. And they asked them the same questions as they asked the Harvard guys. And then they followed them throughout the years. And you can see this on YouTube videos. They're interviewing them and stuff. And then they followed their spouses and their children and their grandchildren. So it's quite a study. And they found out that how satisfied you are at 50 with your relationships, that was what determined how healthy you were 30 years later. Interestingly, isn't it? That's quite something. But there's more to it. Through all the years of studying these lives, one crucial factor stands out for the consistency and power of its ties to physical health, mental health, and longevity. Good relationships. This is a quote in the book written by, I forget his first name, but Waldinger is now the director of the study. He's the fourth director since it's been in existence. He writes, in fact, good relationships are significant enough that if we had to take all 84 years of the Harvard study and boil it down to a single principle for living, one life investment that is supported by similar findings across a wide variety of study, including what Sean Aker did, would be this: good relationships keep us healthier and happier, period. That's what he wrote. How could we leave this out of the book, The Full Power Plan? Because of the studies that have been done on this. They also found out that loneliness kills and that it's as powerful as smoking or alcoholism. And so, yeah, we shouldn't, drink alcohol. No amount of alcohol is a safe amount. Studies have shown that you could drink at least 2 glasses of wine to be healthier. But those studies are outdated now. Now the studies are saying no amount of alcohol is actually good for you. And so, but they're saying loneliness is as powerful as alcoholism. Can you imagine? As well as smoking. And every cigarette you smoke, takes away 14 minutes of your life or something. Well, so does loneliness. So don't be lonely. Figure out what you can do. Use your brain to figure out what you can do to make connections. In the impact of social isolation on poor health outcomes led the NAS, National Academy of Science, to create a 2020 report titled Social Isolation and the Loneliness of Older Adults, Opportunities for the Health Care System. Notice it says opportunities to help make people's lives better. The NAS notes that the social isolation has been associated with about 50% of increased risk of developing dementia, which I noted, and that loneliness among heart failure patients has been associated with a nearly 400% increased risk of death, whereas poor social relationships has been associated with 29% increase of incidence of coronary heart disease and 32% risk of stroke. I know I said that, I'm just repeating it from what I said already. In short, social connectivity is vital to human health. There it is, National Academy of Sciences. Now, let's add to that. One research study, researchers gave volunteers a survey to measure their levels of happiness. Fine. Then they injected them with a strain of flu virus. A week later, they come back. The individuals who were happy before the start of the study had fought off the virus much better than those less happy individuals. So that tells you about disease and viruses and the immune system. Happy people are better able, without even trying, fighting off at least the flu virus. And I'm thinking a few more viruses as well. Okay? So you think about happiness does that. Does anybody think there's an ancient proverb that was written about 3,000 years ago? A merry heart, does good like medicine. It's amazing that happiness and contentment has a physiological difference in our bodies. Just so cool. There they are. Look at them. Look how happy they are. Now, these people, maybe they go to work. I just put this as a reminder in case you had any thoughts or comments or questions or answers or doubts or hesitations or confusions. Anything? No? Okay, let's go on. The quality of our relationships can matter more than the food we eat. Some of this is written in this book here, A Cry Unheard, The Medical Consequences of Loneliness. I read that book, it's got another volume of it. And then The Loneliness Cure in Psychology Today, Mahatma Gandhi talks about the love of power versus the power of love. And here's a young man helping a younger man in a race. Now, the bigger boy was actually winning the race, the running race. And the little boy fell down. And the big boy made a decision to stop, turn around, and help the little boy. Now, the audience, or the crowd in the grandstands, were actually rooting on the bigger boy. And when he stopped and helped the little boy, they cheered even louder. Because they realized that even though that big boy didn't win the race, he won something a whole lot more important. The opportunity, the connection to help someone when they were down. And there's something that goes on inside our own physiology when we lend a helping hand to somebody else. I heard about bags of love around here. Wouldn't that be cool? A lot of bags of love we need. Well, I quoted Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris the other day. She was the Surgeon General of California. And she wrote a book called The Deepest Well. She was the one who looked up the ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. So she writes, or she says this, you can look her up on YouTube and you can hear her talk. She was asked, how can nurturing relationships help us heal? These nurturing relationships, they literally change our biology. When we have safe, stable, and nurturing relationships in our lives, it improves our neurologic functioning. So our brains improve with love. It improves our hormonal regulations. Hormones are molecules which tell other body parts what to do. Hormones are like bosses. They're like directors. They tell other things what to do in the body. So it improves our hormone regulation. It improves our immune functioning. And these social supports are a critical part of healing, because her job was to create healing in the city that she was in. I think it was San Francisco. And she writes this, she writes it in the book and also says it in this YouTube channel. Well, does anyone here know that guy on the screen? George Blines, right? You always picture him, if those of you who are old enough, with a cigar. Always wear a cigar. And then someone will say, I don't know, all this talk about eating, whole foods, plant-based, eating your carrots and stuff, not smoking, not drinking. Look at George Burns. He died at 101 and he smoked a cigar like almost every day of his life. So I think I'll smoke a cigar and see if I can live that long. Does it work that way? If we were being reductionistic, if we were being oversimplistic and irrational, we might conclude, I want to live as long as George Burns, therefore I will smoke a cigar. But that is irrational. Yes, he did live that long. But what I want to be able to show you is something, in a few slides I'll show you what my point is. Let me just talk about this guy. Do you know who he is? Do you know, did you see? Dick Van Dyke had his 100th birthday just a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, 100 years old. And Dick Van Dyke used to be a TV star, and we did Mary Poppins and all that stuff. And here he's at 100, and he looks pretty happy. And he goes to the gym and works out every, so many times a week. He is a happy guy. And his wife, who I'm guessing is probably younger than him, being that he's 100 years old, tells us that Dick Van Dyke is just the happiest guy. He's always dancing. He just dances around, just so happy. Now, I mentioned this guy already on the opening night. Dr. sorry about that. Dr. John Scharfenberg, 100 years old. Now, if you listen to Dr. John Scharfenberg, he's always laughing and giggling and just so enthusiastic about life. So here's my point. I just pointed out 3 men. Women more often live to be 100, but these are 3 men doing it. And what I want to say is that, yes, it may be that when it came to the P, the prioritize high-octane fuel, like eating nutritionally right, maybe they didn't were so good on that. Or the O, omit what is harmful. With George Burns, he wasn't omitting smoking, so he'd have been low on that one. But the whole point is, if you want to have body-mind vitality, you don't just look at one factor. You look at them all. And the social factor, the social connection, some people miss. They say, I eat my carrots, I do this, I do that, I should be healthy. How come I got cancer? or whatever it may be. How come I have heart disease when I do all the right things? It may be that you are doing all the right things, but you're not understanding there are more factors that play into body-mind vitality. And one of those factors is love, is social connection, is psychological health, dealing with stress and things like that. Does that make sense? This is what we're saying. So we don't want to be irrational and say, well, I need to smoke cigars so I can live as long as George Burns, because George Burns was probably really high on that first L, Lovify your life. So was Dick Van Dyke, and so was Dr. John Scharfenberg. They're happy people who were humble. They were interested in other people. They knew how to relate with other people. And so they're probably very high on that, which may have made up for all the cigarettes and booze and what I don't know. I'm just surmising. That's not a scientific statement, by the way. But interesting, Dick Van Dyke was asked, what's your secret? He said, the first thing in my secret is I gave up smoking and drinking alcohol. Because he used to be, I think, an alcoholic when he was in his younger years. He said, I gave that up. And then he says, I'm always moving. And then he says, and I'm just happy. I just love people. And he laughs and all that kind of stuff. So the point here is that it's not just about the food. It's not just about exercise, vitally important as they are. It's about the whole plethora of components of body-mind vitality. Does that make sense? There's that ancient proverb, a merry heart does good like medicine. She sure has a big mouth, doesn't she? Wow. But she's happy. She's very, very happy. Tell that. So let's talk about the do's and don'ts of how to lovify your life. So you have a disagreement with someone. It could be your spouse, it could be a friend, it could be whoever, a workmate, whoever it may be. So I'm getting some of this from the Gottmans. Ever heard of the Gottmans? John Gottman and his wife, both doctors of love and psychology. They actually created a love lab where they had put couples into an apartment with cameras all over the place except the bedroom and bathroom. And with their permission, they observed these couples interacting for a week. And they were studying this. And it got to the point that they could predict the success of their marriage to, I forget what it was, 97% accuracy. So, like really predict, not just a 50-50 chance. How could they predict? By how they treated each other earlier. So this is coming from some of that, the Gottmans. So you say, when you're arguing with someone that you disagree with, find something they're right about. Say, yeah, you're right about whatever that. So say that. Because it has a reaction on the other person, which is, let me talk about the amygdala. We'll talk about it on Sunday night, but I'll talk about it now. The amygdala, part of the limbic system, is that part of the brain that says fight or flight. But more importantly, it's that part of the brain that says, this is threatening. And so when someone is insulting you, or yelling at you, or angry at you, or about to hit you, or whatever it may be, the amygdala is activated right away. And you want to defend yourself or attack, even in social circumstances. And so what we want to do is be able to deactivate the amygdala of yourself and of the other person. And so to get them to be thinking in their cerebral cortex, not in the limbic system. And so one of those ways is to say, you're right about whatever it may be. Another way is say, I'm sorry for, and pick something you're sorry for, if it's true. What I need is, and here's where you actually talk about your boundaries, and you just simply say, honey, or sir, boss, whoever it may be, what I need is. And it may work, it may not work, but it's something you can put in your arsenal. It may work. Here's a good one. I hear you saying, did I understand that right? And that helps us to deal with facts, not feelings. Because we know that when people have debates and arguments and and they hate each other, and they insult each other, they accuse each other, and everything else. It's nice to know what are really the facts, and so we can say, I hear you saying this. Did I understand that right? No, you didn't. I didn't say that. Oh, well, help me understand. Another one is, it's not me against you, it's us against the problem. That's pretty cool. I like that one. Another one, I think we should take a break and come back in 10 minutes. Do you know why? Because if you really are operating out of your limbic system and not your cerebral cortex, you're not going to get any progress. And I mentioned this before. Have you ever tried to reason with a child who is angry or offended? Does reason really work? It does not work. You know why? Because their amygdala is activated. And when the amygdala is activated, it cuts off connection to the cerebral cortex. Now, I'm exaggerating when I say cut off, it cuts down. And electrical impulses, which normally go from the limbic system to the prefrontal cortex, are now shutting down. And so, therefore, that child, and maybe even adults, are unable to reason because their amygdala is taking over. That's why it's good to say, I think we should take a break and come back in 10 minutes. So then that the amygdala can settle down and then allow the electrical impulses to go back and forth between the limbic system and the prefrontal cortex. Now, if you happen to know the brain very well, you know I severely oversimplified that, but I hope you understand. Next one, getting back on track with you is my priority. Saying that. Friend, spouse, and even thank you for listening. Seek the good in others and let them know what you see. It really helped me when I was young. When someone said, I like what you did there. I was like, thank you for that. I go, oh, wow, they like what I did, and it increased the relationship. I thought it was really nice. And so I want to do that too. Sometimes I don't, but I want to, and I do it sometimes. Ask questions rather than always come up with answers. Learn courtesy. Help others. Laugh together and find things to laugh about. Learn kindness. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this. Respond to bids for attention. This is what John Gottman is really famous for in the Love Lab. Here's an example of a bid for attention. A husband and a wife are sitting at the breakfast table, and the husband reading a newspaper. The wife wants to get his attention, but he's not paying her any attention. The wife says, honey, look outside. Look, our flowers are blooming. The husband can respond in three possible ways. Recognizing, not him, but us recognizing what's going on, she is giving him a bid for attention. So he could say, I'm reading the newspaper. Can't you see what I'm doing? Leave me alone. He could say that. He could simply ignore her and just turn the page and continue reading and not say anything. Or he could put the newspaper down and he can look out the window and say, well, look at that. They are growing. Okay, those are three possible ways to respond to a bid for attention. When the Gottmans observed these things, they could predict that third one I mentioned, which I'm guessing you probably know that was the best one to do, is to put your newspaper down. Here is someone who is looking for my attention. Do I give my attention to that person? Since I have a love relationship with that person, I will give my... As a matter of fact, when I read that, it made me more aware of what my behavior was with my wife, and I became more conscious of making sure I did that. Well, the Gottmans, I forget his wife's name, but his name is John Gottman, were able to use that as a contributing predictor of how long that marriage would last. Just how you treat someone who wants your attention. And I thought, wow, that is really something. So that meant, since I learned that, this was some years ago, when I read that, I tried it. I mean, I became more aware of making sure I could You treat my wife with respect and give her attention and where I should and everything. And so, it really helped. I really, if you ask my wife, I don't know what she would say. She'd say, probably don't talk about me, is probably what she'd say. And this is the book that it's written in, The 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work. A practical guide from the international best-selling relationship expert, John Gottman and Nan Silver. So that was the book where I got that from, and I think it's just a great book. Use your talents to build up others. I'm looking for ways to lovify your life. Learn to listen. Those of you who know the book of James in the New Testament, James chapter 1, verse 19, it says, be quick to listen and slow to speak. And so if a person is dominating in the conversation, they're not doing that. And that brings separation, not togetherness. I'll have a little quote on that. So here's this guy. Looks like, I don't know, they're in the workplace. One guy looks like he's kind of domineering and dominating the other guy. Here are some don'ts. Don't be judgmental. We haven't walked in their shoes. Don't make yourself the hero of every story. It gets old pretty quick. Unless you're telling dog stories. In that case, it's okay. Don't isolate yourself. Don't dominate the conversation. Don't be dogmatic. Don't demand. Oh, yeah, okay, I want to go back. I remember talking to a fellow in another province at some meetings. He's a really nice guy, but he sure liked to talk. And he talked, and he talked, and he talked, and he's telling me really good things. And they were insightful, and they were helpful, and they were truthful, and everything. But he talked for about 20 minutes nonstop. And I found that as helpful and nice as it all was, I really didn't want to talk to him anymore. And so he didn't know it. He thought that I was polite, and I was being polite, I was listening. But to tell you the truth, I really didn't want to listen that much. I'd want to listen to about maybe 5 minutes. And so if you can imagine two people talking, one's dominating the other, and the other is forced to listen, a wall, an invisible wall goes up between them. And the guy who's dominating doesn't know it, but he's separating the relationship because of the dominance. It feels like oppression, even though what he's saying may be good things. And so the answer would be, stop talking after 2 or 3 minutes and ask the person, do you want me to go on? Or whatever, just stop and take a breath and type of stuff like that. And that would help the relationship. That's just a practical tip there on that. And so you end up having a workplace that looks more like this, where people are happy to be together. They want to hear the other person because they know the other person is not going to try and dominate them. They're only going to talk for a few minutes, and the other person will talk, and the other person will talk. We all get to say something and share, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what we do. Now, this is a workplace environment. But I find it interesting, and I thought I'd just love to be able to take full power into the corporate world. I love to be able to go to a CEO of a corporation anywhere in British Columbia or Canada or the world and say, I bet I can save your insurance claims and reduce your expenses by probably down to at least 70% of what you're now paying, just by having people follow full power. And one of them is this, right here, loving one another. So I'm going to read this. This is about Lovify in your workplace. In the workplace now, what now gives a person an edge is the ability to build and maintain relationships with colleagues and clients. It's not as much of how smart you are, even how competent you are, as how relational you are in the workplace. This is what brings more success these days. And doing so requires a capacity not only to understand what others are thinking and feeling, but also to extend compassion, gratitude, fairness toward them. As we've seen, a coworker, instructor, manager who is emotionally in touch, welcoming, and principled can bring out the best, not just in herself, but in her team. So it works in families, it works in marriages, it works in school, it works in church, it works in the workplace. Just having love. There's a book that came out about 10 years ago. It's a business book. It says love is the killer app. Just love in the workplace makes the workplace more productive. You get more work done, which means you save a whole lot of money. Just by having love pays. In other words, if you're a CEO, love actually pays. So let me close with Charles Schultz, I think his name is, who wrote, what's this? Peanuts. Charlie Brown. So if you're going to read this, I'll go over here and read this. All right, so Charlie Brown is standing there, and is that Linus? Linus comes up. Boy, you're in trouble. Linus says, you better get out of town. And Charlie Brown is just stunned to silence. The girls are looking for you, Charlie Brown, and are they ever mad? Oh, here comes the girls. What's one of those girls' names? Lucy. Lucy, the psychiatrist, I think. All right, you. So the girls come up. And what does it say? You're the one we've been looking for. We're going to have this out right here and now. And they say, what have you got to say for yourself? Now it's time for Charlie Brown to speak. He says, nothing. You girls are absolutely right. And I'm glad to hear you feel this way. Huh. And the girls just turn around and walk away. Simple as that. Now look what Charles Schultz puts in the mouth of Charlie Brown. My soft answer hath turned away a whole flock of wrath. He's quoting Proverbs 15, verse 1. When we want to diffuse a heated situation, that ancient proverb from 3,000 years ago, a soft answer turns away wrath, is even in a cartoon. So we can learn from that. Anyway, those are some do's and don'ts. You have, I hope, a motive to find love, to be loving, and to find the capacity to love. There's much more, of course, to that. And now we have given you a few hints and tips. Probably nothing you didn't already know, but just some reminders. So then your full power action step for tonight or tomorrow before the next meeting is to go into the workbook. I forget what page it is. Under Lovify Your Life, page 19, and answer those 10 questions on Lovify Your Life. How are you doing on that? Okay? So any thoughts or questions or comments? What time is it? 8:30? Are you kidding me? I can't believe it. Well, how come you've been sitting here so long? Sorry about that. Anyway, thank you for your patience. I'm going to pray for you. I'm going to pray for you. Because, if there's a God out there at all, and I believe there is, God might have some help for us. So let's pray. Our Father in heaven, Lord, is my understanding that you created relationships, and you know how they work. So, Lord, we thank you for a few tips. We heard from Proverbs chapter 15 and verse 1 even. A soft answer turns away wrath, and a merry heart does good like medicine, and those kinds of things. So, Lord, as our Creator, turn our eyes toward your principles of health and happiness, that we can truly claim those promises of vitality by following some more of those principles and habits that we've been hearing about. We thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. May God bless you. Have a good night. We'll see you tomorrow.
I'll just announce our topic for tomorrow night is 4 pillars of fitness. So remember to come in your tracksuits, right? And I'll just comment too, I know that from my experience in my workplace that good relationships, love on many levels is what needs to happen. And I work in healthcare, so if you can imagine, that's super important. Have a good night, everyone. We'll see you tomorrow night at 7.